What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Lions video. Today we got a very fun video in store, as today we will be looking at what the difference is between this new regime consisting of Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell and our new OC, our new DC, and what the difference is between that group and the Quinn era and many groups before them. Talk about whether they're going to be successful, talk about whether this new regime is going to be the right one for the Detroit Lions, talk about some of the changes that they've made and some of the changes that we're already seeing within the Lions organization. Now, before we get into this video and before we get into talking about the difference between this new regime and many of the failed regimes of the past, if you are new to the channel and are enjoying this Detroit Lions content, please consider liking the videos and subscribing to the channel. It takes just 2 seconds out of your day to do so. It's quick, free, and easy, and you would be helping the channel out more than you could possibly know. So if you could do that, take those 2 seconds to simply hit the like and the subscribe button. I'd be greatly appreciative for it. But with all that being said, and without any further ado, let's get into comparing and contrasting the differences between this current regime and the failed regimes of Lions past. Now, the Brad Holmes era in Detroit has already caused a lot of significant change within the organization, and the Lions have already seen a lot of change since hiring Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell to kind of retake over and restart this Lions organization and start taking it in the right direction and kind of repairing it from the Quinn era. Now, the Detroit Lions have already had 8 of their free agents signed elsewhere. We did a whole video on that a few days ago. They have 7 players that are free agents from their free agent class that are yet to be signed but look as though they are not going to be re-signed by the Detroit Lions, and then they've cut 8 other additional players on top of that, with guys including Desmond Trufant, Christian Jones, Justin Coleman, Jesse James, and many other names to go along with it. So that is a significant amount of talent that is leaving your building in just one offseason. So we can already see the change that is occurring. We can already see that change is going to be happening a lot within this Lions organization, especially in this offseason. However, a lot of people, although they can see the change happening, they can see the players leaving and the players coming in, don't know the exact direction the Detroit Lions are looking to go, and they don't really they're not really seeing the broader perspective, and they're not really seeing how significant of change the Lions are actually going through outside of just the talent change and the names on the back of the jerseys. Now, the first thing that I noticed when looking at this regime and what makes this regime a different one from what Quinn was doing, from what the Jim Caldwell era had in store, and from what many other regimes in the past had done, is that this regime, the Brad Holmes and the Dan Campbell era, have started their regime and started their tenure in the Motor City by giving out different contracts. They're giving out different signings, and they're signing different players to different contracts than what we've been accustomed to in the past. When you look at the Detroit Lions' 10 free agent signings that they have made already in this free agent market, 9 of those 10 signings are 1-year prove-it contracts. The only contract that is not that way is a Jamal Williams contract, which is, I believe, 2 years, $7.5 million. Everybody else, though, got a 1-year contract. Every other single player that has gotten a contract, the 9 other players from Tyrell Williams, who was signed over a month ago, to Damian Radley, who was signed yesterday, all have 1-year prove-it deals. Now, this means a couple of different things for the Detroit Lions. Number one, this of course leaves the Detroit Lions in a very good situation with their players, making it so that these contracts are both low risk but incredibly high reward. Each and every one of the players that the Lions have brought in are, one, they're younger players. They're players that have a little bit more youth, a little bit more athleticism, and a little bit more footballing ability. But 2, they're players that the contract is not demanding. The contract does not restrict the Detroit Lions in very many ways. It's a very workable contract. It's a contract with not a lot of guarantees. It's a contract without a lot of capital and financial risk involved. And it's contracts that have a lot of high potential. You look at Charles Harris, a guy that was a former first-round pick, former first-round pass rusher, rusher. Now you're getting him for a 1-year, $1.75 million contract. Tyrell Williams is a guy that's coming in who just got a huge contract 2 seasons ago, was cut because he was injured last season, and we got him for 1 year, $3 million. Jamal Williams, a backup running back, but a very efficient running back and a very big role player for that Packers offense. We got him for 2 years, $7.5 million. These are not contracts that are going to burden the Detroit Lions long term. These are not contracts like Big V or Jamie Collins or Desmond Trufant that are going to burden this team for multiple years, and they're not contracts that are going to guarantee a lot of money to players that haven't earned it yet. That, I believe, was Bob Quinn's biggest downfall, was he was giving out all these large contracts. He was giving out all these big deals with lots of guaranteed money to players that genuinely didn't deserve the money. Now, fast forward to the Brad Holmes era, fast forward to what Brad Holmes is doing. He's giving out 1-year deals for $1 million, $2 million, $1.5, $1.25 million. He's giving out small, incentive-based contracts with low risk, but incredibly high reward and incredibly high potential for a reward, so that even if they don't pan out, even if these players don't work out, and if his free agent class doesn't work here in Detroit the first year, they're here for 1 season and they move on without financial risk and without losing a lot of capital. If they work out, though, if they develop into what they can be, if Charles Harris and Brashad Perryman and Tyrell Williams are going to develop into the players that they can be in the NFL, we're going to be getting very good production and really, really good value out of these contracts, and then we can re-sign them next year once they've actually proven themselves here in Detroit. Now, the second thing that this tells me, and the second thing that I think is significant about these signings, is that it shows players want to be here. It shows that these players genuinely want to play for Detroit, and they're here for the fans, they're here for the city, they're here for the team, and they're not just here for the paycheck. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, you look at a lot of these free agent signings, right? Tyrell Williams, a pretty good, pretty decent wide receiver, had some interest on the open market. I can guarantee you he had a better offer than 1 year, $3 million in Detroit. I can guarantee you he had multiple offers that were better financially and probably going to better football teams, and yet he decided to take the lesser of the contracts and come play in Detroit. Jamal Williams, I can guarantee you Jamal Williams gets a 2-year, $7.5 million deal anywhere in the NFL, and yet for some reason he likely took a worse contract to come play for Detroit. Same thing with Brashad Perryman, same thing with Alex Anzalone, same thing with a lot of our other free agents. They likely had better offers to go elsewhere. There are multiple teams looking for a kicker, and yet Randy Bullock decided to come to Detroit on a 1-year prove-it deal. There are multiple teams looking for good wide receivers, and yet Tyrell Williams and Brashad Perryman and Damian Ratley and Khalif Raymond all decided to come to Detroit on lesser 1-year prove-it deals. That is not something we should be accustomed to in Detroit. That is not something that has happened in Detroit for a very long time. I couldn't even tell you the last regime that was able to pull off these kinds of contracts. I can guarantee you the Quinn Tricia era, Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia never gave out these deals to just about anybody. I can guarantee you Jim Caldwell did not give out these kinds of deals very often, and obviously that was still under the reign of Bob Quinn, but even the previous general manager, I don't believe, really gave out contracts like this that were just 1-year simple prove-it deals where these players were taking less money to come to the Detroit Lions of all teams. This signifies change in the organization. This really, really does, and this is what Lions fans should be getting excited about. Players are looking to come here. Players want to be here in Detroit, and for the first time in a long time, these players are taking less money and worse contracts to come and choose the Detroit Lions over anybody else. I can guarantee you on a 1-year, $3 million deal, Tyrell Williams could have gone anywhere in the NFL if he was asking for that contract. And yet, of all the places he could have gone, he chose the Detroit Lions. Of all places he could have gone, he chose to play in Detroit with Dan Campbell, with Brad Holmes, with Anthony Lynn, and with Aaron Gillette. This team is different. This regime is making the Lions a different team. For the first time in a long time, we're having players take less money to come to Detroit. That goes with the traded players. That goes with contract reconstructions as well. You look at guys like Jamie Collins, who could have very well been cut, but he decided to restructure his contract because he sees something here in Detroit. Nick Williams was a prime candidate to get cut a few days ago, and instead of getting cut, he gave back over $3 million to the Detroit Lions, restructured his his contract, giving away more cap space, giving away a lot of his money just to stay on this Lions roster. Jared Goff did not have to give up a lot of money. He did not have to restructure his contract, and yet he did. He gave up $20 million. He freed up $15 million of cap space just to help the Detroit Lions. He's taking less money over obviously a longer period of time. It's the same amount, but he's taking less money this year when his future is very much not guaranteed with the Lions, but he's taking less money and risking some of that financial success. He's risking some of his financial investment just to help this team be successful because he obviously sees something here within the Lions organization. He wants to be a team winner, and when you get players like that, when you get players like Jared Goff, Jamie Collins, Nick Williams, Tyrell Williams, Jamal Williams, all these different Williams and all these different players that want to help this team and are willing to take less money because they see what is happening here in Detroit, and they can see the track record that this team is on. They can see the track that this team is working towards. They can see that this team is working towards something great. They can see that this Lions team has changed, and they are taking less money to come here and be a part of the change. Now, the second thing that I noticed that is very, very different about this regime, and very different especially in contrast to the Quinn era, is how they're actually building the team, how this Lions franchise is building and picking their players that are going to play for them come September. There are three big things that I really noticed about the way this Lions team and about the way that Brad Holmes is building this Lions regime. The first of which is that they are prioritizing youth. A lot of these free agents are young guys. A lot of these free agents, like we mentioned earlier, Charles Harris is from the 2017 draft. You got other guys that are really young, that are relatively young players that still have a lot of potential and haven't quite hit their ceiling yet in the NFL. The Lions are prioritizing youth and betting on their coaches to develop that youth, develop that talent, and develop that potential into something that they can put consistently on the football field that will help them win football games. The second thing, of course, is, as I just mentioned, they're signing smaller contracts that will be better for the Lions' future, will not burden the Lions' future with large, long-term contracts that they can't get out of for 2, 3, 4 seasons at the earliest. They're not signing those contracts anymore. They're not giving out those contracts to players that they're not confident in, and even in players that they have confidence in, they're not giving out those kinds of contracts anymore, which will, one, help the Lions financially now, but will also help the Lions financially in the future once those bad deals left from the Quinn era are officially off the books. So once Stafford's dead cap is gone, once Trey Flowers' contract is over, once Big V's contract is over, or once we can get rid of that contract, we're going to have a ton of cap space because all those bad contracts will be gone, and all of our players, all of our key pieces will be either on rookie contracts or smaller prove-it deals that were given out in this free agent class. And then the third thing that I noticed, and one of the things I think is one of the most important pieces of building a franchise and building a successful team, is the Lions are prioritizing athleticism. The Lions are bringing in athletes. They're not bringing in players to fit a scheme. They're not bringing in a player simply because he's played in a system before, like the defense that Aaron Glenn is going to run, cough, cough, Christian Jones. But the Lions are prioritizing athleticism. They got rid of Christian Jones and picked up Alex Anzalone, who's a far more athletic and far better linebacker when it comes to making plays, especially in the wide receiver position, a position where athleticism has really, really been lacking the past couple of years, really since Megatron has retired. Our 2020 class, our 2020 wide receivers, our starting three being Marvin Jones, Danny Amendola, and Kenny Galladay, they averaged a 4.5 40-yard dash, which by no means is a bad 40 time for a wide receiver, but a lot of that is carried by Marvin Jones's 4.4. Kenny Galladay ran in the 4.5s, and Danny Amendola almost ran in the 4.6s, and that's when they were at the combine. That's when they were rookies. That's when they were young players. Danny Amendola is significantly slower now. I would not say that Marvin Jones is significantly slower, but I don't see 4.4 speed on Marvin Jones anymore. Our wide receivers were pretty slow last year, and they made up for it with the ability to make contested catches, but they could not create separation, and a lot of that had to do with their lack of long distance speed and their lack of explosiveness. Now, not to say that Marvin Jones or Kenny Galladay or even Danny Amendola were bad football players, but they weren't great athletes, and they did not have a lot of deep speed when it came to running routes and getting separation. Fast forward to this 2021 free agent class, Tyrell Williams runs a 4.42. Brashad Perryman runs a 4.25. Damian Ratley runs a 4.40 yard dash, and Khalif Raymond runs a 4.34. These wide receivers are incredibly fast. We have a lot of speed on this team now. We're bringing in a lot of speed at wide receiver, and those two guys that run in the 4.4s in Tyrell Williams and Damian Radley are both 6'3" or bigger. I mean, Tyrell Williams is 6'4". Damian Radley is 6'3", and they're still running in the 4.4s. That is incredible athleticism. That is really, really good athleticism for a player that is still young, still has a lot of upside, still has a lot of potential, and still has a lot of room to grow as wide receivers and as NFL players. And this wide receiver core and this team in general is different. There's a different aura. There's a different way they're being ran, and this difference within the organization, this one significant hire in Brad Holmes is the biggest difference. The Lions are getting athletes. They're signing lower contracts. They're signing better value for better prices, and they're getting better athletes and better athletic ability to fit to a scheme. They are doing the opposite of what the Quinn era did. They're not signing the big contract. They're not signing the guys that fit the scheme. Instead of getting players that fit a particular scheme, they're getting athletes and they're fitting that scheme around the athletes. They're molding their scheme. They're molding their defensive playbooks. They're molding their offensive playbooks around the athletes that they're looking to bring in, because more times than not in the NFL, if you don't have good athletes, if you don't have the top of the top, if you don't have the best of the best athletes, and you just have guys that fit your scheme, like we saw under Quinn, you're not going to win very many football games, because as it was put on very clear display, especially and significantly against the Houston Texans, we got toasted. We got burnt over and over and over again, because although the Texans were actually a worse team than the Lions, they had better athletes. Their athletes were bigger, faster, stronger than us, and by that margin, we lost our Thanksgiving game by such an embarrassing margin. And that was actually the game that Sheila Fordham made the decision that Quinn was no longer going to be here. So with all that being said, though, that is all I got for you guys today. Again, I wanted to talk about the difference. I wanted to talk about this new regime versus the old regime. I wanted to talk about what was changing in this Lions organization and what I see changing right before my very eyes. Now, with all that being said, that is all I got for you guys today. Thank you all so very much for watching the video. If there's Lions news before tomorrow, then I will obviously make a video letting every single person know. But until then, that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you all so very much for watching the video. And until next time, go Lions.